My name is Emily Brown, and I want to tell you the story of my first job. It was a day I will never forget. It was a day filled with excitement, fear, and challenges. I had just graduated from college, and after months of searching, I had finally found a job. It was my first real job, and I was thrilled to start. I had dreamed about this day for so long, and now it was finally here. The night before my first day, I couldn't sleep. I was too nervous. I kept thinking about everything. Was I ready? Would I do well? What if my coworkers didn't like me? So many questions kept running through my mind. But I had to push those thoughts aside. This was my opportunity, and I was going to give it my all. I wanted to succeed. When I woke up the next morning, I felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. I put on my best clothes, a simple blue dress and a pair of comfortable shoes, and I did my hair carefully. I wanted to look professional, but also like myself. After breakfast, I grabbed my bag, said goodbye to my family, and walked out the door. The journey to my new workplace felt so long, even though it was only a few miles away. My mind raced with thoughts about what was to come. When I finally arrived at the office building, I felt my heart race. It was tall and modern, a place where successful people worked. I walked inside, and the cool air-conditioned air hit my face. I took a deep breath and approached the reception desk. "Good morning," I said softly, trying to sound confident. The receptionist smiled at me. "Good morning, Emily. You're just in time. Your manager is expecting you." I followed her to the elevator, and as we went up to the 5th floor, my nerves started to get the best of me again. But I took a deep breath, reminding myself that this was my dream. I had worked so hard to get here, and I wasn't going to let fear hold me back. The elevator doors opened, and we stepped out into a large, bright office space. "Welcome to the team," the receptionist said. "I'll let your manager know you're here." I was led to a desk, and I sat down. My manager, Mr. Jameson, came over and introduced himself. He was tall, with short brown hair and glasses. He had a serious expression, but when he smiled, it was warm and welcoming. "Emily, it's great to have you with us," he said, shaking my hand. "You're going to do well here. Don't worry." I smiled, feeling a little bit better, but my stomach still churned. I was so aware of every little detail around me, the sound of typing, the hum of the air conditioner, the people talking in the background. I had never been in a professional office before, and everything felt new and strange. Mr. Jameson showed me to my desk and introduced me to my coworkers. There were 3 other people on my team. First, there was Sarah, a woman in her early 30s who had been working at the company for 5 years. She was friendly and quick to offer help. Then, there was Mark, a man in his 40s who was very serious and often kept to himself. He didn't say much, but he seemed knowledgeable. Finally, there was Anna, a young woman about my age who was very quiet but smiled whenever I caught her eye. For the first few hours, everything was fine. I was given a list of tasks to do, and I started working on them. My job was to help with some administrative tasks, answering emails, organizing files, and preparing reports. I had learned a lot about these things in school, but it was different in a real work setting. I kept thinking, this is it. This is the start of something new. I can do this. But then, things started to feel more complicated. Sarah asked me to help her with a task I hadn't done before. She showed me how to do it, but I felt like I was struggling to understand. It wasn't that I didn't know what to do, but it was hard to keep up with the speed of work in a real office. My hands shook a little as I typed, and I could feel the pressure of wanting to do everything perfectly. I was starting to feel overwhelmed, but I didn't want to show it. I didn't want to disappoint anyone, especially not Sarah, who had been so kind to me. I tried to push through, but I could feel the stress building up. As the day went on, I realized that the work environment was not as easy as I had imagined. It wasn't just the tasks that were hard, it was the people, too. Everyone seemed so busy and focused. They didn't have time to chat or help me if I had a question. Mark hardly looked at me, and Anna only smiled when we passed each other. I felt alone. At lunchtime, I sat in the break room with Sarah. She asked me how I was doing, and I smiled weakly. "I'm okay, just a little nervous," I said. She nodded. "That's normal. But don't worry. It gets easier. You just have to keep going and ask if you need help. Everyone was new once, you know? Her words were kind, but they didn't make me feel any less nervous. The afternoon passed quickly, and before I knew it, the workday was over. I packed my things and headed out the door, my mind full of thoughts about how the day had gone. I had survived my first day, but I couldn't help but feel like I wasn't good enough. I had made so many mistakes, and I didn't want anyone to think I wasn't capable of handling the job. That night, I couldn't sleep again. I kept replaying the day over and over in my head. Had I done well? Would they think I was bad at my job? I was so exhausted, but my mind wouldn't stop racing. I knew that I had to go back the next day, but I didn't know how I was going to make it through another day like that. The next morning, I woke up with the same feeling of dread. But I reminded myself that this was part of the journey. If I wanted to succeed, I had to push through the hard moments. So, I put on my blue dress again and went to work. As I walked into the office, I felt the same nervous energy inside me. But this time, something was different. I was ready. I had learned from my mistakes, and I was determined to do better today. I walked into the office, took a deep breath, and smiled. I was ready for whatever came next. The second day felt like a test I wasn't fully prepared for. I had learned a lot on the first day, but I wasn't sure if it was enough. The pressure to do everything right kept growing, and I felt like I was constantly being watched. I couldn't shake off the feeling that I was being judged by my coworkers. Everyone seemed so experienced, and I was just the new person who didn't know much. But deep down, I knew that I had to keep going, no matter how difficult things got. As I walked into the office on that second morning, I noticed that the atmosphere was different. The place felt even busier than the day before. People were moving quickly, talking on the phone, and typing away at their computers. The noise was constant, and it made my heart race. I didn't know how I was going to fit in with all of them. I walked to my desk and saw my to-do list for the day. The tasks seemed simple at first glance, but as I started working on them, I realized that they weren't as easy as they seemed. I had to organize files in a way I had never done before. I had to respond to emails with more attention to detail than I was used to. Everything was a learning experience, and with every task, I felt a mix of pride and fear. Pride because I was learning something new, but fear because I was afraid I wouldn't do it well enough. I tried to focus on my work, but it wasn't easy. My mind kept wandering, and I couldn't stop thinking about the people around me. Everyone was so focused on their own tasks, and I felt like I didn't belong. I couldn't help but feel that I was the only one struggling to keep up. I looked over at Sarah, who was busy typing something on her computer. She didn't even look up when I glanced her way. I wanted to ask for help, but I didn't want to bother her. I didn't want anyone to think that I couldn't handle my responsibilities. It was then that Mr. Jameson came over to my desk. He smiled warmly, and for a moment, I felt like everything would be okay. "Emily, how's it going?" he asked kindly. I smiled back, trying to sound confident. "It's going well, Mr. Jameson. Just getting used to everything." He nodded. "I know it's a lot to take in at first, but you're doing great. Don't worry. If you need help, we're all here to support you." His words meant a lot to me. It was nice to hear that someone noticed my effort, even though I felt like I was falling behind. But I knew that he was right. I couldn't do it alone, and I had to ask for help when I needed it. The thought of asking for help made me nervous, but I knew it was something I had to get used to. This wasn't school anymore. This was real life, and in real life, nobody expected you to do everything perfectly on your own. As the morning passed, I found myself struggling with a task I had never done before. I had to prepare a report, but I wasn't sure how to format it or what information to include. I stared at the blank screen, unsure of where to start. I felt my anxiety rising, and for a moment, I just wanted to quit. But then I remembered Mr. Jameson's words. I wasn't alone. I had to ask for help. I took a deep breath and walked over to Sarah's desk. She was still typing, but when she saw me standing there, she smiled. "Hey, Emily. What's up?" she asked in a friendly tone. "I need some help with this report," I said, feeling a little embarrassed. "I'm not sure how to format it." She nodded and motioned for me to sit down next to her. "No problem. Let me show you." She took the time to explain everything to me, step by step. She showed me how to organize the information and what details to include. It was so much easier when she explained it. I had been overthinking everything, but once she broke it down for me, I realized it wasn't as hard as I had made it out to be. As I worked on the report, I started to feel a sense of accomplishment. For the first time that day, I felt like I was actually doing something right. I finished the report and sent it to Mr. Jameson for review. He didn't respond immediately, but when he did, his feedback was positive. He told me that I was on the right track and that I was getting better each day. His words made me feel proud, and I couldn't stop smiling. Maybe this job wasn't going to be as impossible as I had first thought. The rest of the day went by quickly. I finished a few more tasks and managed to stay on top of everything. By the time the workday ended, I was exhausted, but I felt good about what I had accomplished. I walked out of the office with a sense of pride, knowing that I had made it through another day. Over the next few weeks, things started to get easier. I began to understand the workflow better, and my confidence grew. Sarah continued to be a great mentor, and I started to feel more comfortable asking her for help when I needed it. Mark, though quiet, offered his assistance when I had technical problems, and Anna, though shy, always smiled and made me feel welcome. Slowly but surely, I was becoming a part of the team. There were still challenges, of course. Some days were harder than others. There were moments when I felt overwhelmed, when I questioned whether I was doing the right thing. But I learned to keep pushing through those moments. I realized that challenges were a natural part of the process, and if I wanted to succeed, I had to accept them and learn from them. One day, about a month into my job, Mr. Jameson called me into his office. My heart skipped a beat as I wondered if I had done something wrong. But when I walked in, he smiled at me. "Emily, I just wanted to let you know that you're doing an excellent job. Your progress has been great, and I'm really impressed by how quickly you've adapted. You've become a valuable member of the team, and I just wanted to say thank you for your hard work." Hearing those words felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I had worked so hard to prove myself, and now it felt like it was finally paying off. I felt a sense of pride that I had never experienced before. I was doing it. I was succeeding. That afternoon, I took a walk around the block to clear my mind. As I walked, I thought about how far I had come. I remembered the nervous girl who had walked into the office on her first day, unsure of herself and scared of failure. And now, here I was, someone who had faced those fears and kept going. I had learned so much about myself and about the world of work. It wasn't always easy, but it was worth it. As I walked back into the office, I felt a new sense of confidence. I had learned to trust myself, to ask for help when I needed it, and to keep going even when things were tough. I knew that this job was just the beginning of something bigger. The challenges I faced were shaping me into someone stronger, more capable, and ready for whatever came next. And that was the most important lesson I had learned. No matter how hard things get, you can always push through. You just have to keep going one step at a time.